It's cast over time once again, and we have the Shambler once again against Benno. Actually, I'm not sure if this particular matchup has been casted before. Maybe. Oh, that's of course correct. We had the Enigma game where the Shambler decided to practice playing Protoss, and he had forgotten a lot of the details. Anyway, this is on Boskevine, a map that Shambler has never lost in, at least in recent history. So interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. There was a game where I was probably going to at least beat him or go even with him on this very map when I was playing Terran, but it desynced, so we got owned by... there was some analog-related silliness, I think, anyway. It could have actually been the Anseal shit that seems to be causing some issues in current games. But that's neither here nor there. Let's focus on what Shambler is going to be doing now. As Protoss, he, and of course as the more experienced player, he is favored. He is certainly supposed to absolutely smash things. But if you watch the previous castover where the Shambler took on Nablime, and if specifically you watch the unlisted stuff in there, you'll notice that Shambler actually did lose to Nablime in 2 games as Zerg. You know, in theory, it's supposed to be a favored race of his. So he's not immortal, even for players that are relatively new. However, I think Nablime just generally has more strong mechanics than Benno. Benno's learning, and he's learning at his own pace, and he's definitely somebody who likes Cyprians. So his first unit is actually going to be a Maverick. However, he's banking that gas for the quarry, if I had to guess, and he'll go ahead and scout with his Stockade Constructor. And it is a Cenotaph in the background, so we're going to be seeing, I guess, probably, I would be really surprised if we see a hard committal into anything other than, here's the quarry, anything other than Hierophants. Like, I would be surprised to see a hard committal out of the Cenotaph in general, because versus Bio Terran, it's actually quite hard to make them work. They take a lot of damage on the approach, so you kind of need some sort of meat to provide for them. You could imagine maybe frontlining with golems or something could work, but it kind of requires some army control and cohesion. And so, indeed, it's going to be a Hierophant first. Shambler knows this, and even though his scribe does get hunted down mercilessly, I think he spotted the quarry and presumably also recognizes, yeah, this is a stockade. So, the Mason will be here in time to scout the embassy, which is pretty big because it means that there's not going to be early aggression happening, or if there is, it's going to be off of maybe like a one-base sequestered icon build for Acantors. We'll see what Shambler has in mind here. But I like this play because it's kind of interesting in the context of like the Mason scouts. He sees that it's a Hierophant first, so not Legionnaire, so therefore not something super hyper-aggro. But the embassy does mean that it could be drops, so now he's got to be careful of that. You know, maybe put an anchor near his resource line, and particularly maybe like a watchdog up here or something for anti-envoy. Although envoys are pretty fast, so it's kind of hard to know for sure if you're going to be able to do much damage to them. It's going to just be scribes, though, for now, so it's kind of like a macro play. You can imagine that this is another thing that people don't really do as Protoss, but you can do, of course, is grab the fact that you see the quarry here, which I hope DF is able to come up with a model for sometime soon, because goddamn, it's pretty ugly. But, you know, we're seeing a very passive play out of Shambler. He's just going to go for the macro stuff, it seems like. He's slowly starting to amass more units, but right now, if Benno just stemmed across the map, I think he would actually have a pretty good chance at doing some damage. This Hierophant is not going to be able to do too much, but of course the 1 armor does give it a little bit more protection. It only ends up losing 20 points of HP. And forcing the anchor here before the treasury is fine. As Protoss, you definitely want to do that because they cost about the same amount. Well, actually, the treasury costs 250 minerals. But an anchor costing 150 minerals is no joke. So slowing it down by a considerable amount, over half the cost of the treasury, is going to be big for the tempo play. Both of our players building lots of workers. We love to see that. And of course, Anchor is going to be loaded up with Mavericks. We could even see an encroachment outwards. Benno does have enough minerals to afford the treasury, but is instead just going to continue producing units, which is just fine. And yes, the sequestered icon to go with the embassy, this is sort of what I was expecting. Now, because Benno doesn't have a star pad, he kind of has to abandon the front post and recognize that there could be drops coming due to the fact that the embassy is there. We are probably not going to see a witness first, although timing-wise it could still work out, because the Acantor does train a while, and, I mean, Shambler has a little bit of gas to spare, and he can certainly spare that for the Acantor, but instead it's just going to be the Envoy, and so he's looking to get the Acantor out as fast as possible. There is a star pad finally coming now, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Acantor drop deals a lot of damage. You know, this is something that in TVP by default, it's something that if you don't really know how to play against, you can often get owned by, you know, not necessarily, I won't say like a skillful outplay or anything. It's just, you can get destroyed by it without, if you don't really know like how to position your units properly. And in CMBW, that is also true. Obviously, the Acantor is the Reaver, for those unaware. We oftentimes call it Iquare because, well, Iquare is a homie Rest in peace, by the way. And, oh, actually interesting. A Maverick ends up stimming outwards just to scout the map. I like that play from Benno. I'm not sure how he managed to get it around the Hierophant. I didn't pay too much attention, but I think maybe the Hierophant was like further down to the expansion or something. Anyway, that'll give him some info. He's got a Wraith coming out for that as well. So the Cantor fires the Plasma Shell, which deals 80 damage now, or 60 damage, I think, instead of 100. Anyway, it deals a lot of upfront damage still. Don't let that fool you. The Scarab no longer it's now called the Plasma Shell, and the Plasma Shell itself is blind fire munitions. Instead of having pathing like a unit, the weapon just behaves like a normal projectile. So what we're going to probably see is these little areas of low ground here behind the resources abused. I think maybe just barely the Mavericks can reach the Cantor here, but instead it's just going to be the first shot fired over there, and it is indeed 80 damage, so it will one-shot the Mason. So he's going to have to evacuate. He does it in a bit of an awkward way where he's not really... he's not really handling this too well. Yeah, there's the anchor. Riposting the attack a little bit there thanks to the range that you get from being inside a structure like that, and also the range you get from... oh no. Oh dear. What's going to happen here? Oh, he's actually hitting the Envoy pretty well there. Only 4 more shots from the Mavericks would have done it. Didn't quite have the potential there. And yeah, he can just use a Wraith to hunt this down. He's a little bit poor micro there, but at the very least, it'll dissuade this from happening any further. Although technically, Shambler could just let the Hierophant try to deal with that, which would be kind of funny. He's even got a Legionnaire stationed off to the side as he takes his own expansion. And he does indeed have a comfortable worker lead now, so it's going to be a while before Benno can necessarily do too much, although when he lands his treasury and adds a quarry, he'll be able to replenish his stocks a little bit faster. He does have some eyes in the Shambler neck of the woods. He can confirm that the Envoy is back home. There is a second one just about finished, and there are some defenses warping in the background. You can afford to do this if you're Shambler, because realistically speaking, you might have scouted the Trojan, you might have scouted the fact that there's a star pad to begin with. Obviously, the Wraith kind of tells you that anyway. So, yeah, this could realistically be like territory where you get a drop. And an engram even going down to the main base, that's a very expensive option. Probably not as expensive as it should be, but it's still a fairly expensive option, and that would not surprise me one bit if, that ends up coming to fruition. I'm looking at this now, and I should probably make a Cantors require more transport space, because fitting more than one per Envoy might be a little bit much. But at the same time, I mean, if the Wraiths had come back home and stationed themselves in the right spots, as they are now, I think the Envoys would have been scouted out ahead of time anyway. And, he has his own Trojan. He could theoretically, counter-drop onto the Cantors. It could definitely be a thing. But Benno is learning by fire, trial by fire here. And yes, indeed, that will initially indicate to him that, hey, there's a transport, but he's very, very slow on the reaction. He didn't notice it at all on the minimap. So, and he only has one Envoy, right? So, I mean, one Wraith, rather. So, what's he really going to be able to do with this one Wraith? Oh, there go all those Mavericks. It was nice knowing you. No, he actually manages to stem them out. One thing you can do with Trojans, by the way, is you can obviously just lift them over the plasma shells. It's pretty good. He's not really splitting his units very well here. And the Wraith should have been on the Envoy to begin with, because that adds so much potential, particularly with flash shielding. So you can see the fact that the decision-making wasn't there for Benno. This is basically a crash course on how to, well, maybe how not to defend versus this sort of thing, right? And Shambler's just, basically cheesing him to death, which is, it's an asshole thing to do. But, I mean, if you're not going to be prepared to deal with this, then you're going to get owned. Plain and simple. I mean, look at all of the stuff that is happening back at home, where, again, if it kind of forces you to be either, if you have to riposte it well with defenses, or you have to be very aggressive on the back foot. And it's just not going to happen. He's losing so many resources to it, and there's just nothing that he can do. This looks really fucking busted to people who don't know how easy it is to riposte this. But again, that's one of those things where if you don't riposte it, it ends up doing this to you. So I'm pretty sure this game is over, but we'll watch Iquare's, I won't say demise, because I think he's actually just fine. I don't know what happened to the Wraiths. The Wraiths chased the other Envoy down, and now is coming back. Yeah, GG is called, and Benno has left the game. Well, I'm sure the Shambler takes 6 satisfaction in seeing that happen again. And, you can post a comment telling him he's a dickhead, but at the very least, he's at least an educational dickhead. He did tell you that how to, well, he told you that that's a thing that can happen to you if you're not prepared. And I think, considering you see the fast embassy, you have to think maybe that's a possibility. So yeah, no surprises there. A very, very resource-intensive build that makes his actual army very vulnerable. And then after on the back of the foot, after the first drop was so successful. Theoretically, there's a chance that, he doesn't do it again, but he still could have. A good Terran player, I think, could have piloted that into a more even situation, even after the initial losses. But losing like 12 workers, by the way, or something, that's pretty intense. So we'll go on to game number 2. And game number 2 is here with Shambler rolling Terran. So this TVT will most likely be a bit of a palate cleanser in terms of the levels of aggression here. Shambler is Cordovan, by the way, and Benno is Aquamarine. Same spawns. We'll see how that one plays out. Hope you guys are enjoying Cosmonarchy Brood War castovers being a daily thing, and we are indeed going to be trying to continue that. If I can get enough of a backlog recorded, then even during my trip, we can still have daily castovers. We will see. In fact, just briefly, I will mention some of the other games that are going to be coming up. We have a 2-game set between Mystery Meat and the Shambler. We have the best ZVZ to date game that's apparently epic in length, and that is going to be Nablime and the Shambler. And then we also have a whole set of games between the Shambler and Nablime, and maybe a whole set of games between the Shambler and Mystery Meat, I think. I'm not sure. We'll have to see about that one. But yeah, some games on non-standard and new maps, actually, are going to be pretty interesting to take a look at there. So we'll see how they go. For now, we have, of course, Benno going for a stockade opener. It's actually going to be fairly mirrored for now. Shambler, we talked about this in the Nablime game. Shambler's openings for his optimizations or whatever of resources gained and stuff are a little bit more drilled than Benno, even in a race that he's not necessarily familiar with, right? His quarry is a little bit faster. His stockade was completed, I think, a little bit faster as well, but I might be wrong about that. But I think it's probably true since they both went Maverick first. And yeah, so his stockade was finished first. His quarry started first, and this obviously will finish first. And Benno is taking a little bit longer to amass gas. Only one guy on Geyser. Now, it's not a requirement that you get your quarry up super soon. Eventually, it'll just normalize, assuming you get your quarry within the first 2-3 minutes of the game. But in a mirror matchup, it does matter a little bit more. And obviously, Shambler did all of this while scouting, first, right? So that also contributes, I believe, to what's going to happen. As Mason even gets in there for a little bit, really it's not going to find too much. I don't think he even spotted the quarry. However, Benno is not going to see anything other than the 3 Mavericks, so at least he knows it's probably going to be a stockade opener, but he doesn't know if his opponent has a quarry. He doesn't know how many workers he has on gas. He has no idea if to expect whether or not there's a star pad coming or what. So Benno is a bit in the dark here as to what his opponent is trying to do. And on a map like Boskevine, where there are a lot of very open area for air units to come in, it's kind of expected to see a lot of drops. And that's something that I think is... I'm not sure what you would describe that as, but I feel like that's one of the calling cards of the map, is that, yeah, there's a big surface area for air units to come in, and therefore, you could drop, you could proxy, you could do all sorts of weird stuff, because there's such a massive area to cover. And so, you could drop, you could elevator, in theory, a pretty big army, although the elevator spots are probably, over here, which is a little bit more fair. You think of elevator as, very quick, cover distance or whatever. You don't want to be elevatoring in the context of, oh, I'm going to elevator from this mineral field all the way down here. That's like an escalator, bro. That's not as fast as an elevator. So, maybe that's what we'll call it if we see something like that happen. But either way, there is going to be Star Pad out for Shambler and indeed also for Benno. But again, Benno's about a minute behind, it seems, just in terms of some basic things. Now, we can start to see the worker counts be back in action, pretty much. In fact, Shambler was idling there for a little bit, but he's back as well. His Star Pad will finish sooner. And he's got less military units than Benno, by half, in fact. But in Terran, these are all Mavericks. That's not going to matter too much. We'll see what his first unit is going to be out of the Star Pad. I assume it'll be a Wraith for scouting. It's actually going to be a drop. So he's instantaneously going for a Trojan and adding a second Star Pad. If you add a second Star Pad before other Stockades or Fulcrums, I suspect you're not going to be backing this up with mass drops, and instead you're going to be doing a... I guess this is like a one-base mass Wraith push or something, and the Trojan is going to be mostly just for the initial Bioforce. There is going to be an anchor that will protect the mineral line, from Mavericks, which is all Shambler has at the moment. And a treasury is going to be in here. So he's not... I'm really interested in seeing what this build actually is for Shambler. I mean, his income doesn't sustain spending from all of his production facilities at once, so it's probably a little bit off as a result. This Maverick, you could probably station 2 or 3 Mavericks along this route if this is what you're going to do, especially since you have the spare ones anyway, and you can just recall them, like you put them on Control Group 0 or something, right? And see what you do from there. So it might be a Cyprian drop, actually. This is going to hit very later, much later than I thought. It's probably going to be hitting with the Wraiths, which is kind of interesting. You can fit 4 Cyprians in a Trojan, and those still do not outrange Mavericks in an Anchor, so that is worth noting, right? It's 5 range to the 6 range of the Cyprian, so Anchors with Mavericks in them will absolutely shred them. But you can get them into a position maybe to harass the workers. I'm actually not sure. Maybe up here, you know, north of the star pad, so to speak. That's where you could try to go for that. There is going to be a drop from Benno as well. So he's learning maybe from me, you could say. Yeah, that might be a possibility. But the Wraith from Shambler is going to confirm, yeah, there's a drop here. I'm not so sure that... I suspect maybe Benno saw that. He's going for an Antseal now for detection, so I believe that is the case. And Antseals will be pretty effective at stymieing the Wraith activity as well. That's something that you got to remember. So it's actually going to be Cyprians in an Anchor because for a counter drop. So this Trojan, I guess, was, I won't say a misbuy, but it's like one of those things where he didn't really do anything with it. His treasury's also been done for a while, and it might end up lifting off at around the same time as the treasury for Benno, which is kind of interesting, right? He's adding a Fulcrum here. This is going to be for Blackjacks, almost certainly. We know that Benno likes to do that. And I like this Watchdog positioning, even though the Cyprians could be dropped over here to kill it, because the Antseal can then try to protect it from Wraiths and such, and generally it's going to harass any air units that are going to be sieging your base, although you could maybe argue that it should be like to the left of the ridge or whatever, but in this general vicinity is like not a bad spot for it to be in. So the Antseal is just going to go ahead and check out what's happening over here. The treasury has lifted off, but, oh yeah, here's an Anchor, and there's an Anchor being built on site. So you can see very similar goals here for our players. The treasury is now taking its sweet time to get over here, and I'm sure it will be adding a quarry there. The Vestry is coming up. So Clerics, and not Shamans, but Clerics recently did get hit in the healing factor rate, or the individual healing rate. So I was either going to do that or make them more expensive. Why hasn't Benno landed his stuff? What's going on here? I don't know what was going on there. But yeah, a little bit slower. Again, he's like behind by a minute. You know, this quarry's almost done on the Shambler side. So yeah, that's a little bit awkward, because if you're going to be in a situation where you expect to be even killed with your opponent, yeah, being behind by a minute is going to eventually start to add up in terms of stacking up those changes. Now, there is an Anchor over here. It does have Mavericks. And the Wraiths are going to be over here for the express purpose of trying to snipe units. This isn't really super consequential right now. The Antseal, of course, could be focused down with enough effort, but it would require multiple salvos, and I don't know that it would be too worthwhile. He's going to pick off a Mason that was just idling, which basically just reminds Benno that he had it to begin with, really. Taking some damage from the units walking over the Antseal's range. And trades 1 Wraith for another Mason. I won't say that's super good, but, you know, we could see another Mason out from the star pad, or another Antseal out from the star pad, rather. And meanwhile, like, both of our players built a Trojan and it did nothing with them. So I guess that particular difference is even out. But you can see Shambler stretching ahead in workers now. Benno has let his macro slip. He's got 1,000 minerals in the bank. Definitely could be spending that a bit better. And not as much gas. You need, you know, 3 workers on gas nodes for full saturation. But he has started harvesting from the geyser. Meanwhile, over here, yeah, we see Shambler fully saturated on all of the gas nodes, so he's going to be swimming in it a little bit more. You know, you can see he's pretty close to being able to go for an Atlas. And against Terran specifically, you know, you can have relatively mineral-heavy defenses, like Mavericks and Anchors, for example, or Cyprians and Anchors even, where there's like 25 gas a pop. And you can go for something like that and still have, you know, bank enough gas to be able to tech up. 600, 600 is the breakpoint you're looking for. And he's about to hit that gas count as he's adding another treasury. So Shambler's just going to play a slow, drawn-out macro game here. And meanwhile, Benno's actually going to be taking the middle base that has more gas nodes. So he's going to be behind on tech pretty considerably. He has so many minerals, but so does Shambler. Obviously, 600 of those will be earmarked as soon as he remembers to build his Atlas, which is coming down just now. There it is. So that's significant, right? And then, you know, we're going to see, yeah, obviously the treasury coming in, some defenses in the top left, just being set up preemptively. This treasury is finished, so he can go ahead and lift it off over there. And he's adding some fulcrums for the switch out. Maybe this is what the star pads are for, mech drops or something. I'm not really sure what he's planning on with that, or maybe that was just autopilot stuff, which is amusingly correct. What does he want to do with these Masons? He's actually sending them back at home because he needs to resaturate his main a little bit. He recognizes that. There's some conversation recently about what reads can we possibly do that'll be organic to the game and not just like numbers like in Starcraft 2 that just take you out of the game. What reads can we do for stuff like that, you know? What can be done in the context of indicating saturation? And, you know, people have been saying, like, maybe we can color the resource graphics, like tint them down or something a little bit. Loads of idle Masons. Again, benno a little bit outclassed individually, I think, in terms of the attention economy. So that's something to think about. The APM as a resource, attention as a resource, that's what RTSs are all about for me anyway. So I'm always happy to see that at play. We can talk about those kinds of differences. And, you know, sometimes it's little things, like, you know, this star pet doesn't have a rally point, so the Wraith isn't going to be in the rally. Well, that probably isn't going to matter here, but, you know, it's a thing. This Trojan is still here. I see the Cyprians leaving, and it's kind of funny to me to think about that, because as more Fulcrums get added, it's going to be Blackjacks out the wazoo. That's something that clearly benno is a fan of. He likes his mineral-only units, that's for sure. He likes Mavericks, he does like Cyprians, but, you know, to a lesser extent, and for a more well-purposed all-around unit. He's a big fan of... he doesn't have any clerics. He built this vestry and didn't do anything with it, just like the Trojan. But he's a big fan of Blackjacks, it seems. So he's going to be going for those as well as... Oh, he had Goliaths queued, and then he decided, no, never mind. So the Wraith is going to go ahead and espy yet another base being set up as a fourth treasury is set up. So Shambler going rather aggressively and greedily, you could say. It's greedy in the sense that if since he's not building... anything other than treasuries, they could easily be sniped. Now, the Cyprians are here to start heckling the workers. If there were Cyprians in this anchor, that would be pretty good for countering that. But as it stands, you know, it's not going to matter too much. He didn't even really need to pull back there. What you can do in this situation is grab like the workers that are in here and just task them onto the mineral fields over here. And then you'll be pretty much good to go. But as it stands now, he's going to be opening himself up to more pain and obviously reducing his economic rate. Shambler's going to have access to more minerals up here than this base in the middle, which has more gas. So that's going to be something to keep in mind as well. The Cyprians do end up getting onto the high ground, benefiting from a range advantage. This is probably something that if Beaver had control over, he would just make this unwalkable entirely. Here's the Goliath to try to absorb the shots. It actually wisely fits the Trojan further back with the units there, right? So that's pretty good. You know, tickling them to begin with. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but there we are. And yeah, the Palladiums are already making madrigals, presumably for additional drops, while benno is not even done with his Atlas yet. Okay, so the madrigals are going to finish a couple seconds after the Atlas finishes. Like, that's how disparity, you know, how much disparity there is in, like, the macro game and, like, the attention focus and stuff. No more workers than the natural for some reason. I guess they all went back home, but they're not saturating the gas anymore. He can start to cap the geysers if he wants to, and he is going to go ahead and build a base in the bottom right, which means that he will eventually have the economic advantage. But I think even the minimal amounts of drops, like the little bits of aggression and stuff, the Wraith play, the drop play, Shambler hasn't really been super aggro, but any of that kind of threw benno off his game a little bit. He's going to start adding Palladiums and Starports. He's going to be going for Sundogs, most likely. I'm not sure that he realizes that they were revised to be single target. But here we go. All of these stuff. I don't know how much of that, if any of it, was canceled. Obviously, that last Sentinel was not. He has a decent amount of minerals, but, you know, if Shambler flies over that bottom middle base and sees nothing but, like, a total empty mineral line, that's going to be really funny. He's now going to sort of maybe try to use his Wraiths for sacrifices here, try to get some kills. He got, I think, 1 Mason and maybe 2 Masons, and then obviously the Watchdog. That's not too significant, obviously, specifically when you have like all these quarries and stuff. benno actually has more workers than Shambler, but his saturation is fucking non-existent. So, yeah, he's not even mining gas in his main again still. So I think this game may have gotten away from him a little bit. Starting to add some captaincies is Shambler. Back at home, he does have he's fomenting a madrigal drop at some point. I'm kind of surprised that he hasn't loaded these up yet. In fact, I'm surprised he doesn't have more. No, maybe that Trojan did come from that top star pad. Oh yeah, I guess the other Trojan was down here. It may have died as it evacuated or something. I feel like I missed something here. Like, why is this not being saturated again? He's starting to cap the geyser, and okay, saturating that. Capping one of these geysers, not the other one. Going to try to set up another base, another stronghold over here. His army has moved out, so this treasury is not going to be able to set up shop. More anchors being set up. Phalanxes are going to go ahead and deploy to hold back the army. And yeah, at least the treasury will stay alive, but get to see the faster deployment speed of the Phalanx there. Got some of his own coming up. This does not count as cliff advantage, unfortunately, so... I think the whole map would need to be restructured a little bit if you're, like, in terms of the tile layer, to make it so that there was actual cliff advantage at all states. So... That's because Beaver, for some reason, thought that we had access to such heretical technologies as painting height manually in SEM Draft, in Brood War. Nah, bro, this isn't StarCraft 2. Obviously, I say that with tongue-in-cheek. Like, it would be nice if we had that, but we do not currently. So this, on the other hand, is a height disadvantage. So the Sentinels will have better range. They'll be able to outrange Phalanxes in Siege mode. That is going to be significant. Yeah, we actually recently got an improved version of the shape of the estimation here. So it's ranges are not circles in StarCraft. So we have an improvement on the pre-release right now. So at some point, you'll be able to see that when I mouse over these. Obviously, there's like a lot of other things. Like eventually, I'll be able to multi-select and whatnot. The Daedala is on the way for Shambler. Some Watchdogs over here for Anti-Wraith. I think the Wraiths were like crowded over here or something. I don't know if they all died or... doesn't really look like it. Yeah, I'm not sure where they all are. Another one just got created. So I think they did get wiped by this force over here. There's a single Valkyrie. And the Wraith for Benno was about to scout this area out. Yeah, here's the Trojan that was damaged. I was wondering where that one went. So the Madrigals are actually being used defensively, or positioned defensively, posturing defensively. Here comes the set of units, just going to get tickled to death. You know, at the same time, Benno can maybe try to do something here, but it's proving rather difficult for him to get up that ramp. So, you know, this is where you might want, you know, transports of your own. You might want to maybe, like, scale up this side of the cliff or whatever, or maybe you want to use air units, right? Your starports, you don't have a fountainhead, so you don't have anything here. And he's only now going to, I think he was just about to resaturate his natural mineral-wise. What is he? I'm so confused. I swear I feel like there's like a weird desync happening where he just didn't do it. No, he's now doing it. Like, what? What? But he's building a base at the 4th. At this point, Shambler is moving his defenses down. This is kind of like how you play Terran. And yeah, the treasury is coming back. Burning and all. Who needs to repair it? WTF. My tank. Oh, yeah, so this is something that I already fixed as well. Basically, Blizzard decided to fix the tank stuck bug underneath structures. Instead of queuing an order to make them, you know, unsiege, they would just kill them. So we fixed the code for when you land on it. But there's still something that checks in general, like runs every frame or whatever, that says, hey, is my Phalanx colliding with a building? If so, fucking blow that shit up, you know, assuming it's in siege mode. So I had to find that and then patch it to, instead of issue the like self-destruct order, issue the unsiege order. And that actually worked like a charm, you know? Because of the way that the unsiege order works, you can't issue other orders during it, right? So, like, I tried to break it to see if I could, like, queue a bunch of other orders and stuff. It just ended up getting interrupted. Maybe there's some more work that needs to be done. Like, that's the only thing I can think of is, like, why would you allow, like, something so stupid to happen in your game? Why would that be your fix for it? Like, it seems really weird and counterintuitive. But, hey, now we're on even ground here, so I think the Phalanxes will be able to do a thing. Unfortunately, 2 of them are in range. Just peppering the area. Goliaths are here to reinforce. That Wraith is not going to get too much done. And now he's kind of like calling out to Shambler, like, hey, bro, come fight me. That one Sentinel dealing so much damage. And out of range of all Phalanxes. Oh, he attacked his own treasury some more. He's helping. Oh my god, Benno! Move your Goliath! So the Madrigals in their deployed mode have less range than in their non-deployed mode. It's a little bit counterintuitive for people. Oh my god. Help. Help! Benno, they're crying out for help. He won't help them. He does not care. His Blackjacks and Mavericks and Cyprians can die by the thousands until he is appeased. Fountainhead finally no, that's a Daedala. Okay, no Fountainhead. But the Daedala has been out. We got nuclear missiles. We got a diadem. This force is about to get absolutely slapped. And actually, I think I remember some conversations about this, so... Wait for it. Nope. Okay, never mind. Wait for it. Wait. Wait. Yes, this is the way. Yep. Ooh, Okay, never mind. I thought something silly was going to happen. Oh, there it is. There it is. I was waiting for it. Well, Shambler can't believe it. He's like, what? How did I win? All I did was build one diadem. The Reshamble Pro. No go. Anyway, yeah. Let's just say Benno was not, he did not have the heart to deal with the diadems. He had his own data coming, but I think really what happened there is Shambler kind of outclassed him in the macro department, which is weird because Benno's usually pretty good about macroing, but if you set him off a little bit with any sort of early harassment, he seems to overcommit. He's not comfortable yet. It seems like if I had to like give advice to Benno, I'd say try to get more comfortable riposting those early harassment attacks because they're going to be part of the game as far as like an option you can do. So you want to get better at responding to those. The Cantor game at the beginning, I don't even know why that was included. I guess maybe Shambler was trying to be like, hey, check this game out. Isn't it so cool that I can do this to somebody? It's like, well, you know, doesn't make for great viewing, but at least it's educational. On the context of, you know, what would you say? The context of the Terran game was a little bit more interesting, the TVT, because it's like, it was a death by 1,000 cuts. There's like a lot of just small little things that gave his opponent the edge. But then the big things like abandoning saturation on your natural mineral line, not harvesting gas from your main for a while, like all that stuff was just, it was 4 Cyprians and a Trojan, and it was like 6 or 8 Wraiths or something. And like, that's all it really took to really fluster Benno. It felt like anyway. Maybe he's tired, maybe he's late. I don't know what the reason was, but I would say to Benno, try to get better at responding to that harassment and going back to normal, getting back to homeostasis. Because as soon as you get back to normal, as soon as you get, like, the sooner you get back on track, the sooner you can, you know, basically correct for those issues instead of them just piling up because you never really fix them fully. So that's what I would say about Benno, and that's what I would say to you, actually. If you're watching and you're wondering how to get better at harassment, maybe this was actually useful for you. Either way, you can take a look at Shambler's protocol and say, oh, wow, harassment, yeah, that might be how you at least try to do it, at least try to pull it off. You know, the embassy and just one base sequestered icon of Cantor, like all that stuff is kind of interesting for Protoss. But if you're more like Benno, you're trying to get better at dealing with harassment, maybe there's some pointers in there for you for how to deal with that. And that probably is applicable to any RTS, really, but to CMBW especially. And until next time, until the next cast over, don't die.